Yet he tears and rips the corner of the garment of Shaul, which certainly represents the kingdom. It's as if he's ripping up the kingdom of Shaul, which is followed by, in verse 6, his heart pounds because he thinks he still did something wrong. And at this moment we see in verses 8 and further that he has to shift away his supporters because it's likely they want to get up and kill. They want to get up and kill who? To kill Shaul. But he persuades them with his words. Thereafter, as we learned, this is just a short summary, David gets up, leaves the cave, and calls after Shaul in a lot of humility. He calls him Adoni HaMelech, and he bows down to him, and he tells him, why do you listen to Lashon Hara, bad speech, that I'm against you? Why do you listen? Believe it. Didn't you witness yourself with yourselves today that I had the ability in the cave to do whatever I wanted to do with you? But look, my father, he calls him my Abba in verse 12 of chapter 24. Out of love, look what I have in my hand. I have the garment in my hand. The fact that I have that corner of the garment that I cut off of your royal cloak and I didn't kill you, you should know my intention is not evil. I have no intention to do crime against. I never sinned to you. And what are you doing to me? You're looking to hunt me down. And now at a further humility, in verse 13, David decides, let God take judgment. I'm not going to litigate against you. I'm not going to make claims against you. Let God judge between you and me. And if there's need for vengeance, let God do it to you. But I'm not going to touch you. So we studied that David has utmost saintliness, chasidut. In the language of the Ralbag, chasidut mufleget. He has such an extraordinary saintliness. He doesn't want to touch, as we see, the Mashiach of God. What does the term, the Mashiach of God mean? What does it mean, the anointed? Someone, a king anointed with anointed oil. He himself is going to be a king in the future. We don't want anyone to be trigger happy that they're going to take the law into their hands and start assassinating kings because they think the king is doing a wrong thing. We did say, halachically, what did David have a right to do? To kill him. Because the Torah law is, anyone pursues to kill you, what are you allowed to do? Preempt and kill him first. David had that halachic right. He doesn't want to use it. He wants to use chasidut. But he's saying, God's going to take care of you. And in verse 14, he brings in the analogy of the Torah that from evil people come out evil. What's coming out of you? But I'm not going to do it. There's a classic case. For those studying Masechet Makot. Okay, for those studying Masechet Makot, when you're dealing with the laws of Galut, right? When someone kills a fellow Jew but by mistake, unintentionally, then the Torah provides semi-atonement that he can run to which where? A city of refuge. How many cities of refuge do we have in the land of Israel?
6.
Plus?
3.
He has a broad outlook. He looks to the east and the west.
Yeah.
You're looking out to the west. 3 on the west side. How many on the east side?
3.
3 plus 3 is plus another. How many cities of Levium? 42. Sum total?
48.
Exactly. 48 cities of refuge that theoretically, rotzech b'shogeg, if someone kills, mistakenly can run to there. What does the Torah say? The Talmud say? Let's say that Reuven killed Shimon by a field with intention, but there were no witnesses. What will God do? God will opportune a situation where this murderer, okay, is standing on the bottom of a ladder, and Shimon, that maybe even killed someone else by mistake, but there were no witnesses either, and therefore he's not in the Galut, in a city of refuge. Shimon comes down the ladder, falls on a bad step, falls on Reuven, kills him. So God opportune situations, there's nothing beyond the eyes of God. I'm not going to touch you. God will take care of you. That's what he's saying to him. And then, in a very extreme way, and this is what we got up to in our last shiur, Psukim Tedvav, as we're going to learn now, the finale, the last 9 verses. Let's concentrate. Verse 15. Acharei mi yatsa melech Yisrael? Acharei mi ata rodef? Acharei kelev meit? Acharei parosh echad? In a very unusual way, David considers himself, until now, I was like a kelev. Why was I like a kelev, a dog? Because, klavim are very faithful to their masters. So he's depicting himself as a kelev, but I was until now faithful to you. Okay? But now you're running after me to try to kill me all the time. What are you running after? A dead dog? What is it worth your time? Chaval. Furthermore, I'm like a what? A parosh echad. I'm like a flea. You know what? Have you ever had fleas with you? Never. You want to just play along with me? There you go. The flea, one moment is over here. The next moment it jumps to here. And it jumps to there. The fleas are always jumping from place to place. You don't have flea problems, I see. I bless you with children that don't have it, but be aware, you're going to have to buy a comb to take out the fleas of your daughters, especially with their long hair.
Nice.
What?
Nice.
There you go. You should know that. Ken, we had it all the time with all our kids, especially when they go to the sandbox to play with the sand. And there's a lot of lice, yeah. But they can jump around. I'm like a flea. I'm running from one, I'm on the run. All the time, I'm running away from you. They want to kill me. So he's humbling himself and saying, what are you wasting your time? Running after like a dead dog, after a flea? And again, in verse 16, about judgment done by God. We're going to ask the difference. What's the difference? V'yad Adonai ledayan, v'shafat beini uveinecha, v'yera v'yarevet rivi v'shpeteni miyadecha. Do you remember in 13 he said God will judge, and here he's saying God will be the dayan. What is the difference between a judge, a shofet, and here in verse 16 he says God will be the dayan? So the Malbim explains, a shofet, a judge, is someone that accepts the claims of the two sides, the plaintiff and the defendant. And he weighs the situation. The dayan is the one that cuts the case. He gives a verdict. He's the one that tells what's going to go on. So not only is David saying, let God be the one accepting our claims, but let him give the psak din and I will accept it. And let him take care of my quarrel and judge. In other words, David is saying, I have nothing against you. I know you did so much wrong to me. So David is acting with utmost humility, utmost submissiveness, utmost chassidut, saintliness. Let God do these matters between us. Here is the end of the musar, the rebuke of David to Shaul. How does Shaul react? Pasuk Yud Zayin, Vayi, verse 17 of chapter 24. Vayi kechalot David ledaber tadvarim haelu. When David ended finishing these words, El Shaul, Vayomer Shaul, he speaks softly, Vayomer, Hakol Chazeh beni David, Vayisa Shaul kolo vayeft. Wow. Am I dreaming? Is that your voice? He can't believe the words he's hearing. It's penetrating him to the extent that he calls David beni, which is obviously a language of affection, a language of love. There was no doubt that until the last period of time, Shaul adored David, respected him, knew how powerful he is, but then he got full of all this jealousy, and it just ate him up in his life. And then Shaul raises his voice out of sorrow. Okay, his nefesh is complex. On the one hand, he wanted to kill David. On the other hand, here, he's crying. Okay, maybe he could be crying is that he can't change his ways. He's just so stubborn and torn out of jealousy that even if he's crying right now and expressing love, it's like someone that's like the jealousy's eating him up. We're going to see this. Pasuk Yud Chet makes an admission, verse 18. Vayomer el David tzadik ata mimeni. You're right. You've done a lot of things on behalf of the Jewish people. You're a high-ranking officer. And what did I do to you? Vani gimalticha ara'ah. Ken, my jealousy, my hatred to you, my innocent hatred to you is terrible. He realizes it, yet he can't control himself. Pasuk Yutet, verse 19. V'ata in you, he got it tahayom. Lahagid doesn't only mean to tell. Lahagid can mean to give testimony. We see that in the you bring up the 7 ripened fruits from the holiday of Shavuot and on, you have a mitzvah not only to bring up the 7 ripened fruits, you have a commandment also to read the section of Bikurim, as it says in Dvarim chapter 26. And there the term is used, Higadati Hayom, I testify today. So right now, you, David, you're testifying. How are you testifying? By your actions. Et asher asita iti tova, you did goodness with me today. What did you do? Et asher sigirani Hashem biyadcha v'lo arakti. He believes that what happened today in the cave is by the hand of God. And God opportuned a situation where you could have stood up and killed me, but you didn't kill me. Okay? He's saying thank you to him. Pasuk Kaf, v'chi yimtza ish et oivo v'shilcho b'derech tova? Is there such a situation where you find your own enemy and you send him away? Of course, what do you do to your enemy? You clobber him. Should we illustrate? No. Okay? I'm happy you're laughing. Okay? So here, Shaul seems to be giving a full admission that he's done wrong and that David has done the right thing. The second half of verse 20, Vashem yishamelcha tova. Wow. May God pay your reward. Tachar hayom hazeh, because of today, asher asita li. Wow. Not only show affection, the show. Not only does he admit to his wrong and to David's right, but he's praying to God that may God pay him back. Now notice, does Shaul accept this turnaround? Does David accept this turnaround in Shaul's way of life? Let's keep on reading and see. Pasuk 21, the last 3 verses of the chapter. Ve'ata ena hine yadati. Oh, ki maloch timloch. Here it is. For the first time, Shaul admits to something that's been bothering him. What has been bothering him now for months and months and maybe years? That David is the new superstar and he apparently will be king. Of course, David was anointed secretly by who? By Shmuel. Did Samuel the prophet, ever say to David, when in fact you'll take over? No. Did he say in fact ever to Saul, when are you going to stop your reigning as a king? No. Therefore we have a balagan. Not only with your learning is there a balagan once in a while, we have a balagan right here as well. We don't know when these things are happening. And remember, David didn't want to rock the boat. He did rock the boat to a certain extent by tearing and ripping the cloak, the royal cloak of Shaul. But here it is in verse 21, for the first time, Shaul admits that you're going to be king. And what does he say about his kingdom? V'kama biyatcha, mamlechet Yisrael, the kingdom of Israel. This is the first time the Jewish people have a kingdom. Right now, it's not by the official king that's supposed to come from which tribe? Yehuda. This is a temporary kingdom, Saul from Binyamin. But he's saying, you're going to be the king. The kingdom will stand up in your hands. Okay? The Midrash says, the oral Torah says the following, and Rashi brings it. Samuel handed over a sign to Saul and says him the following: Hakorea mi'ilo yimloch tachtav. Anyone that will come and tear your garment, the oral Torah says, then you should know that he will rule instead of you. This sign was given to Saul. And now that he realizes that David tore his garment, that's not just the tearing of a garment, that's the ripping up of his kingdom. And now he realizes it. What he was thinking in the back of his mind, that David will be the king, and it bothered him. Now he's a firm believer it's going to happen. And he's afraid. Why is he afraid? Look at Pasuk of Bet 22. Vi'ata. By the way, it's clear to Shaul, everywhere David goes, he's successful. Every national project he wins. He's being a fugitive. He's running after to kill David every time. David always manages to get out alive. He sees that God's hand is with David. Politically, militarily, in every way and fashion. Pasuk Kavbet, verse 22, here we sense fear. V'ata, and now Saul asks, Hishavali b'Hashem, swear to me in God's name. Im tachrit et zari acharai. V'im tashmid et shmi mibeit avi. Now, all of us as Tanakh students, it's hard for us to learn understand the jargon or the syntax of the statements in Hebrew of the Tanakh. Whenever you read an oath, I know it took me a long time to understand this, and it says the word im, it means not. Meaning, swear to me by God that you will not wipe out my seed. Im. You see the word im? That's what, and there's another im, meaning v'im tashmid et shmi, and do not destroy my name from my father's house. Now, this is how the chapter is about to come to an ending. Shaul is basically demanding an oath by David for two things: don't wipe out my children, and don't wipe out my name from my father's house, which is more or less the house of Shaul should go on and last. Now, does David take an oath? Last pasuk, Vayishava David l'Shaul. I'm stopping there and asking you the following question. For those that have studied up ahead and have remembered the terrible incident that there's going to be a punishment for, what city did Shaul kill fellow Jews in? Nov. Nov is somewhere here in the end of the Benjamin area towards East Jerusalem. It serves as the temporary dwelling place for a few decades as the miniature holy temple. The Mishkan is there, except for which vessel? The Aron. The Aron is still in the corridor before Yerushalayim in the back to us. And there Shaul accepted Lashon Hara, spoken by Doeg Adomi, and he eliminated, he assassinated 85 Kohanim in that town. Plus, we saw he killed other men, women, and children there as well. We're going to learn later that there were non-Jews serving in the Mishkan that were killed. Do you know which entity I'm talking about? You learned it in Sefer Yoshua. Spit it out.
Those guys.
Yeah, those guys.
Water bears?
Right. What are they called? The one Givonim. Right. One of the Canaanite entities, North Yerushalayim, from Givon. Today we have a town called Givon, right next to Givat Ze'ev, and a lovely new area that's been settled the last 30, 35 years. There were the Givonim that they fooled us into a treaty. They put on a Broadway show that they're coming from far away, stale bread, torn clothing, their New Balance sneakers were all torn up, and so on and so forth. And they fooled us in thinking that they're really not one of the Canaanite entities. A Canaanite entity, we're not allowed to make a covenant with them, we're not allowed to make a treaty with them, unless they decide to give up their Sunday morning activities. You know what I'm talking about? You know what people do on Sunday morning? Okay, they go to the church.
Coffee with chocolate.
At the church? I don't know what they're serving. They didn't know. They didn't know that we can call out to peace regarding the 7 Canaanite nations. They didn't know this. Had they known this, maybe they would have given up and say, okay, we support Israel. They didn't. They put on a show, tricked Yoshua. We made a covenant with them. It's published in the Columbia Journal, in the New York Times, the Boston Daily, the Philadelphia Tribune. I don't know what it's called. You don't know either. Okay. In any event, Givonim were killed by Shaul. Givonim, these servants were killed by Shaul. Later on, they're going to ask for revenge when David is king. And what are they going to ask for? You read already? You didn't read this? To kill Shaul's sons. Do you know what David does?
Oh, yeah.
He delivers them. So we're asking ourselves. Very good. So, who has an answer to this question? No.
David didn't do it directly. Some people did it.
One answer is that the Givonim took them and he didn't prevent it or something like that. Another explanation brought in the Malbim, though I think he rejects it. What does it say in the last pasuk of our chapter? Vayishava David l'Shaul. What's not stated? That it's exactly about, I will not wipe out the children of Shaul. That's not stated. That's not stated. In other words, it could be that he took some sort of oath, but not in particular regarding the children. In any event, we'll get to when we treat it. It becomes a big event in the land of Israel under the status of David as king, that we'll learn that a tremendous desecration of God's name was made when these Givonim, these Gentiles that are working in and around the Mishkan area in Nov, are murdered by Shaul. It seems that we did not keep our side of the bargain. We made a brit hundreds of years ago during Joshua's time. We made a contract with the Givonim. You're okay, we'll guard you. And now you're going to be, what did you say, woodcutters and water barriers, right? Chotvei etzim v'shoavei mayim. Chotvei etzim v'shoavei mayim. And here, it seems that later on we'll learn that he gave up these kids of Shaul. What do you notice at the last phrase of the chapter? Vayelach Shaul el beito v'David v'anashav alu el hametzudah. Shaul goes back home. He's leaving now Judean desert. His life has changed. He's giving up his kingdom. Yet he goes back home. Home is here in Binyamin. What does David do? Does he go back home to Beit Lechem? He goes up to these Mitzudah, these fortresses on top of the Mount Judean desert. What's going on? What comes into your mind? What do you think? What do you understand here? Is there peace? Isn't there peace now? Isn't there shalom? Isn't there shalom now between Shaul and David? Excuse me. It says Shaul goes home, but David goes. He's going up to these Mitzudot, these high fortress, like where Mitzada is in the Dead Sea area. There are these plateaus of fortresses on top of mountains. You can stand up there and defend yourself from anyone that's penetrating to try to climb up. Why is he going there? Don't you think he should go home? What do you understand?
People don't accept him as king.
First of all, he's not ready to be king, and it could very well be that people didn't accept him. Remember, we went to war against Keilah. He was afraid that the Jews in Keilah, even though it's a Judean town, they're going to extradite him. They're going to hand him over to Shaul. In other words, the laymen of the Jewish people across the country still may support who? Shaul. We saw an example. But why is he not going back home?
Maybe his family's dead.
His family, he was hidden in Moab, and his parents were killed by the Moabites, we learned in the Midrash. But why? So what's the matter? He can't go back to Beit Lechem now? What does it show if he's not going back home? This is what I thought.
Worried.
Very good. What is he worried about?
Maybe he's going to get hurt somewhere.
Why?
Someone's going to recognize.
Change again in his mind.
Shaul's going to change his mind. He's not steady. He's not steady, Eddie. He's not Yatziv, right? He's not Yatziv. He's not steady in his mindset. He can't rely on this, and therefore he's afraid. He's afraid. Let's start the chapter. Perek Kafei. Vayamot Shmuel, vayikavtzu chol Yisrael, vayispedulu, vayikberu beveito barama, vayakom David, vayered el midbar Paran. What do you say about the timing of the passing away of the prophet of the generation? The fact that the passing away of Shmuel comes here, what is this indicating? He doesn't die only after what event happens? The transfer of power. At least the admission of the transfer of power. That Shaul admits that David will be the next king, and he does it bifarhesia, in public. He does it in public. Now Shmuel has ended his career. He was the one that anointed Shaul, and years later he now anointed David, but he's not told by God when David will take power. And now David is about to take power, and he passes away. Notice the respect he gets from the nation, because it says vayikavtzu, kibbutz. You see the word vayikavtzu in the Hebrew? Vayikavtzu chol Yisrael. The entire nation collects for his funeral. Where is it happening? Vayispidu vayikberu beveito barama. Okay? Hop, skip, and jump. By car, 10, 12 minutes, we travel north after the Ramot, where the terrible terror incident happened on Shabbos, Yom Shishi in the afternoon. We come today, you can see a minaret, a very tall minaret, standing on top of a mountain. That is the burial site of Shmuel. If you stand on the roof here, you can see, you've probably seen it several times. When you come up to the Yerushalayim Tel Aviv highway, just look to the left, you see something standing on top above Ramot neighborhood. That's called Ramah. Ramah from the word Ram. Hashem is Ram v'Nisa. God is high and lofty. Ramat Golan, the Golan Heights. Ramot Eshkol, the Eshkol Heights. You've heard of those names. Ram, Gavoa. Okay, where he grew up, where he was born, where he lived. That's where his eulogies are. That's where his burial is. And notice about David. Vayakom David Vayered El Midbar Paran. Who knows geographically where the Paran desert is? Yeah, it's mentioned in Chumash. That's going far south towards Sinai.
Oh no, it's not Laban.
No, Paran is towards the Sinai desert. He's en route to go far away. Why? Exactly the point we said. Exactly the point we said. It's reporting Shaul, and maybe Shaul's going to change his mind.
So the readers think that now that Shmuel died, that Shaul has no more mercy on him, because maybe Shmuel was between them a little bit, that he was afraid to pursue him again.
Yes, absolutely. Very.
Ken.
And now, en route to that area, we're told about the following, and this will end today's shiur here. Pasuk bet, v'ish b'ma'on. An ish is a VIP, not just any. When the Tanakh says he's an ish, it doesn't mean a man as opposed to a woman. It means an important man. V'ish b'ma'on umaseu b'Karmel. If you've traveled on the south Hebron road, past Hebron, where our ancestors are buried, we come to the towns of the southern Hebron settlements. And there we have Ma'on and Carmel and Susia, if you've heard of these names before. So we have a VIP, a very, very important man living in Ma'on. However, his business, Ma'aseu, what he's doing for a living, is in a neighborhood city called Carmel. He's 2.5 meters for a basketball. What do you mean? The more he was problematic, more he had problems with the Plishtim, the more his wealth grew. Remember that? He was Gadol Meod. So the Tanakh uses the term Gadol Meod not physically but monetarily. He's a very wealthy person. Here's an example. Velo, and he has tzon, sheep, shloshet alafim. 3,000 head of sheep, ve'elef izim, and 1,000 goats. Look, even for those times, that's a lot of heads of sheep and goats. You know, each one goes for what? 200, 300 shekels, 400 shekels, at least. He's a very wealthy person. After he grows them, he sends them to the slaughterhouse, I would assume, right? Vayi bigzoz et sono b'Karmel. What season is it? In Carmel, what season of the year is it? Some of you are farmers, aren't you?
Fall. No.
Summertime. When do we share? Bzzz, bzzz. When do we share the hair of the wool of the sheep? Summertime. Ask me why. Ask yourself why. Very good. We have mercy. Ken, you don't want the sheep to wear a fur coat, fur woolen coat in the summertime. It's hot for them. You want them to be able to come together and reproduce. When they're hot, too hot, it's not comfortable for them to reproduce. So it's a known fact that here in the summertime in the land of Israel is the time for sharing. Now, if you're an owner of this livestock, it's going to be a very happy time for you. What are you going to do with the wool?
Make slippers.
Make slippers? Say that. You make slippers. What do you make out of the wool? Money, winter coats. You sell it to the Jewish businessmen in New York, textiles, right?
The Lower East Side.
The Lower East Side. Okay, so you sell wool. People make wool coats, carpets. Okay, it's a big market, and now it has to be a happy time. Can you imagine what's going on in the eyes of this person? He probably sees the shekels coming in, right? If he had some overdraft bills in the winter, he now can pay off all the bills. However, we're going to end the shiur and notice what is his name. Pasuk Gimel, V'shem ha'ish Naval. Did you call me a neve what? You know, if you want to curse someone out, you call him a, God forbid, not me, you're not going to call me out. You call him a nevela. What does a nevela mean? A nevela is a carcass of an animal, a dead animal. But it's used as a cheap word. If you want to cheapen someone, you call him a nevela. You're not going to call me a nevela, will you? Thank you. No, thank you very much. See what a good person, so well mannered. Okay? Now, naval, it's like you're like disrespectful. What's a better word for a naval? A villain, yeah. Excuse me, sir. At the Brit, are you going to call your son a naval? Mazel tov, Yikarei Shmo b'Yisrael, and the name is Naval? What's going on? How do we understand this? For this and more,